If you scanned the brain of a genius while they solved a complex puzzle, you'd probably expect to see a massive fireworks display of neural activity, a computer running at full power, fans spinning, CPU overheating. But when neuroscientists actually ran the scans, they discovered something strange. The smartest brains were often the quietest, not inactive, just efficient. In fact, many high IQ brains use less energy than average ones when solving the same problem. Which raises an interesting question. If intelligence isn't about working harder, what is it actually about? When brain imaging technology first became available, scientists ran an experiment. They asked people with different IQ levels to solve logic puzzles while their brains were being scanned. The assumption was obvious. Smarter people should show more brain activity. After all, harder thinking should require more power, but the scans showed the opposite. Participants with higher IQ scores often displayed less activity in certain cortical regions. This led scientists to propose something called the neural efficiency hypothesis. The idea is simple. Highly intelligent brains don't necessarily do more work. They simply avoid wasted work. Imagine two people driving to the same destination. One takes a complicated route full of wrong turns. The other knows the exact shortest path. Both arrive at the same place. But one brain burned far less fuel getting there. One of the most famous attempts to understand intelligence involved the brain of Albert Einstein. After his death in 1955, scientists preserved and studied it in detail. They expected to find something obvious. Maybe a bigger brain. Maybe more neurons. But that's not what they found. Einstein's neuron count was actually fairly average. What stood out instead was something else. His brain had an unusually high ratio of glial cells to neurons in certain regions. Glial cells aren't the neurons that perform calculations. They're the support system. They feed neurons, protect them, and help maintain efficient communication between them. Researchers also noticed structural differences in Einstein's parietal lobes. These areas are deeply involved in spatial reasoning and mathematical thinking. In Einstein's brain, parts of this region were wider and more interconnected than average, which may have allowed faster integration of complex ideas. In other words, Einstein's advantage might not have been more processing power. It may have been better wiring. To understand that wiring, we need to talk about white matter. If gray matter is where the brain performs calculations, white matter is what connects everything together. Think of gray matter as the computer's processor. White matter is the fiber optic cables linking the entire system. Using a technique called diffusion tensor imaging, scientists can actually map these communication pathways. And study after study has shown something interesting. Higher intelligence often correlates with better organized white matter networks. These networks allow key brain regions to communicate almost instantly, especially the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the parietal cortex. This system is sometimes called the parieto-frontal integration network. When these areas synchronize efficiently, information flows smoothly across the brain, which means ideas combine faster, patterns emerge quicker, and complex problems feel easier to solve. In other words, high IQ may simply mean higher neural bandwidth. But there's an interesting side effect to this efficient wiring. A brain that processes information quickly can also be more sensitive. Some researchers believe highly intelligent individuals often process sensory information more deeply. Subtle sounds, emotional cues, visual patterns. They may notice details that others overlook. It's almost like their brain is running reality in higher resolution, not just thinking faster, but perceiving more. Which might explain why many highly intelligent people report feeling mentally overstimulated in chaotic environments. Their brains are simply processing more data. Now here's the question most people ask. If intelligence depends on brain efficiency, can you improve that efficiency? The answer appears to be yes, to some degree. The brain constantly rewires itself through a process called neuroplasticity, and certain habits strengthen those neural connections. Deep focus is one of the most powerful. When you concentrate on a task for long periods without distraction, your brain strengthens the pathways involved in that activity. Unnecessary signals get eliminated. The network becomes faster and cleaner. Physical exercise helps too. Aerobic activity releases a molecule called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Scientists sometimes describe it as fertilizer for neurons. It helps strengthen connections and supports brain plasticity. And finally, learning new skills forces the brain to build new pathways. Each unfamiliar challenge pushes your brain to construct more efficient routes between neurons. Over time, your mental networks become more streamlined. So intelligence may not be what we thought. It's not just about memory, not just about knowledge, and not even about their raw brain power. Instead, it might be about organization. The smartest brains are not necessarily the busiest. They're the ones that take the cleanest path to the answer. Less noise, less wasted effort, just efficient communication between billions of neurons, which means that intelligence is not just a psychological trait. It's also a property of the brain's physical architecture. And understanding that architecture may be one of the most important steps toward understanding the nature of human intelligence itself.